so excited to be the first one to cab off the rank in the 2021. I'm Rachel. I'm the founder and CEO of Ocean Mind, and I'll pass it on to the others to introduce themselves a little bit. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm Lisa. So I'm heading up the research team at Deakin Uni, who's partnered with Ocean Mind to help evaluate their program. And I'll let my team introduce themselves.
So I'm Maddie. I'm with Deakin as well, and I work with Lisa on the research team evaluating the surf therapy program.
Hi, I'm Cameron. Yeah, I'm part of the Deakin research team working alongside Ocean Mind.
Great. Well, should we jump into a bit of a discussion, Rach?
Yeah, sure. I thought we'd start off first by kind of looking back at how we got to here and sort of how I got interested in surf therapy. So I just wanted to give a bit of a background of where it all came from me personally, and then sort of build it out on how we developed the program. So I started working as a youth worker back in 2003, and I was working with young people that were exiting prison and that had contact with the homelessness system. And I would often see a lot of the young people would be needing some mental health support and would be needing mental health services, but would really not engage with the traditional styles of mental health services at all. So throughout that period of working with these young people, I was always looking for something more, something that they would engage with. And I went down there and looked at bush adventure therapy and using narrative therapies in outdoor environments. And from all the research that I was doing, it looked good, but it couldn't quite find the right modality of what I wanted to use or how I thought would be a great modality to use to support young people to engage in therapeutic interventions. So whilst I was working, I did get quite burnt out from the work that I was doing. And in 2013, I kind of just stopped and just needed a break. So I took some time off. I went traveling, I traipsed around the world for a while. And then I found myself in this little town in Portugal called Peniche. And I was working there just in a backpackers and still really down, still really not feeling okay, feeling that burnout within me still. And the guy that I was working with, he was an avid surfer, and I didn't know how to surf. It was quite bizarre being the Australian there that didn't know how to surf. So he came up and he gave me a board. He said, listen, surfing's going to make you feel better. And I was like, yeah, it might do, it might not, but give it a go. So he organized my first lesson for me, took me out in the water, and when I got there, I was still apprehensive, but I was going to give it a go and jumped in the water. And it wasn't instantly that I realized this, but kind of halfway through the session, I realized that I was actually having fun, and that dark cloud that had been following me around kind of stayed at the shore and out in the ocean. It wasn't there with me. I was kind of just enjoying myself and concentrating on what I was trying to do, which was trying to surf, which I did really, really badly over and over again and didn't get to my feet till the fourth or fifth lesson. But when I had that realization that dark cloud was on the shore still, I was like, this might be it. This might be that modality to help the young people in my work. And so when I got back to Australia, I was like, need to kind of to do some more research. So I got back to Australia and looked at what was happening in that world and just Googled some surfing and therapy and wondering whether it was there or not, wondering whether there was anyone in the world doing using surfing as a tool for therapy. And it was amazing that I came up with a couple of different places around the world, which was really exciting. I kind of got super, super excited and just emailed them all and went, hey, I want to do what you're doing. How do I do it? And I came across the Wave Project over in the UK, and I messaged Joe and I'm like, hey, what you're doing is exactly what I want to do here in Australia. Can you help me, or can you teach me how to do this? And Joe got back to me, which was amazing. And and just said, yep, great, let's jump on board, let's try and make this happen. So it was really thanks to the WAVE project and the model that the WAVE project have that we were able to bring surf therapy sort of down to Victoria. And Joe kind of just mentored us every step of the way. And they even provided seeding funding for us to start that pilot model, which was really exciting.
Yeah.
That is really cool. Thanks, Rachel. It's so interesting to hear how Ocean Mind has evolved and how it kind of has come to be. I'm wondering what aspects of the program, or what aspects do you consider when bringing the program together, when trying to think about how the program would look in the Australian context?
Yeah, well, what we did is we piloted the model from the WAVE project for the first 2 sessions, and then realized that it was making, having some great outcomes for the young people. So we thought we'd continue it on. So looking at developing that model, we looked at a couple of different areas. And one of the main things to me when developing a youth service was about accessibility, and it had to be accessible to all young people. And so we looked at, well, what were the barriers to accessing support? And we looked at, obviously financial is going to be a barrier. So we've made sure that all of our programs are free. We looked at, how many young people are within sort of public transport access to the beach. And we realized that there's going to be a lot of young people that might not have that parental support to get to the beach or that access via public transport. So made sure that we provided transport to the young people going back and forth to the beach to make sure that they had access. The other thing that we saw was one of the barriers was the referral process. A lot of big programs have quite an onerous kind of referral process with lots of pages where they need to know lots of information about the young people. And so what we wanted to do is pull back from that and say, hey, just get their names and their contact details to us and let us do the rest. So we had a really easy referral process, and then looked at, well, what was our referral criteria, and made sure that that was really open as well. We said, 8 to 18, and then those that are experiencing mental health challenges, that were socially isolated or experiencing a disability. So it was a really open criteria, and we're not place-based. So any young person can get referred through to our program. Then we kind of looked at, well, what else was a barrier for a young person? And we looked at, what were those personal barriers? And we after those pilot programs, we really recognized that the young people found it really difficult to come down to the beach for the first time without any contact with any of us, just a quick phone call to tell them which beach to go to. So we realized that we needed to do those individual assessments. We needed to do meet the young person, meet the family, understand their support needs, and then develop the program and really kind of make sure that there's an individual response for each of the young people. And so we'd match them with a mentor that would kind of match their personality and really be able to support what their needs were on the beach.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Lisa, I'm wondering how did you find out about the Ocean Mind program, and why was it interesting from a research perspective?
Yeah, so I guess that's probably interesting from my end how the research collaboration with Rach got started. So Ocean Mind were looking for volunteer mentors, and I went along to one of their information sessions because I thought, my background is in clinical psychology, so I was looking to, sort of be able to apply those skills outside of a clinic room, I guess. And when I saw the call for mentors, I thought, oh, this looks brilliant. This is right up my alley. And then from that information, sort of the guys at Ocean Mind were just talking about, the ways in which people could help out. And then Rach actually mentioned about, their sort of plans in the future for wanting to do some research and some evaluation. So it was kind of, I guess, Rachel's foresight and luck that I was there that night. And after having a chat after the session, we sort of worked out that perhaps my skills were better met by contributing by doing a research evaluation rather than working as a mentor. And unfortunately for me, in the attempt to keep the research independent of the program, I haven't actually been able to mentor yet. So I'm waiting for the trial that we're doing now to finish before I get involved, I guess, in that side of things, hopefully down the track. But that's how we started. And then Cam and Maddie came on board. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you got involved in the program as well? Cam, do you want to start?
Yeah, so thanks, Lisa. In 2019, I was doing my honours in psychology, and yeah, being from the Surf Coast myself, it just kind of aligned naturally that I have been a surfer myself, and then that there was the opportunity to be involved with Lisa and Deacon in terms of doing a research project. And yeah, so I spent the year working alongside Lisa and Maddie and Rachel and the Ocean Mind team, and yeah, just investigating that. And it's been a great process to be a part of in my first experience of research.
How about you, Maddie?
Maddie?
Well, I was doing my clinical masters, my clinical psychology masters at Deakin, and working with Lisa. And she'd mentioned this surf therapy project that was happening. And I suppose, like Lisa, I'm always interested in how to get young people engaged in mental health programs, because especially in Australia, we've noticed that the uptake for those kind of more formal mental health services is actually not great for young people. And so I was really drawn to contributing to the program, knowing that Ocean Mind are so connected with the community, and it's really, that community built program. There's lots of different ways that I'm sure Rachel will speak to that, the Ocean Mind program is really connected within that community. So that was a really attractive point for me. And so I've been working with Lisa and alongside Cam since about mid-2019. I am still learning to surf. I was not surfing before, and I continue to try and give it a go. It puts me in a good stance with the other kids though, because I tell them that I'm learning just like they are.
Nice. So Rach, maybe it might be worthwhile then if I guess you run us through what the current model is with Ocean Mind, which then might lead us into talk about how we've gone about evaluating the program and the choices we've made.
Yeah, sure. So we kind of look at the program overall as a 4-phase program. If the young people sort of go through the whole sort of phases, but we look at the first phase being that initial connection with Ocean Mind. And we know that young people, this might be the first time that they are connected with a mental health service. So we really, really concentrate on making sure it's a positive experience. We do know that if young people have a negative experience in their first contact with mental health services, then they're not going to go and get additional support in the future. So we really want to make sure it's a really great experience. So the referrals come through from support workers, school staff, psychologists, pediatricians. We really have as long as there's a support worker involved, we have the referrals come through from those support workers. And then when we get the referral, we actually contact the family and set up a Zoom call, and we talk to the family and the young person about their support needs and what if there's any worries or challenges that they think they come up to by being involved in the program, and we project them out with them on how they can get down to the beach and how they can be successful in the program. So once we've done that individual assessment, we go through that matching process of matching a young person one-to-one with a mentor, and we try and match them on personality types and skill levels, and try and really make sure that that match is going to be a really solid one for that development of a relationship over the 6-week program. So first day, the young people arrive, we introduce them to their mentors, and then we kind of have two different elements to the model that we use when we're down at the beach. And so at the start, we run some activities. So we call them our psychoeducational activities. And really they're about supporting the young person to develop that sense of trust with the group, to really build on the relationships that they're making with their mentor to begin with, and then with that wider community as the program progresses. So we're teaching sort of socialization skills, we're looking at communication and building trust, all before we get into the water. Then once we do those activities, we then spend the second part of the program down on the beach, learning surf skills on the sand, and then the kids have an opportunity to be in the water. That doesn't mean that every young person's going to be out there surfing straight away. We do see some young people take up to 6 weeks before they're happy and feel confident and comfortable to get on a board. But because we have that mentoring happening, we can really go at each individual's level. So we meet them where they're at and we support them to sort of move forward. So that's part of our 6-week program. And so after the kids are gone through the 6-week program, they graduate and are able to become part of the Ocean Mind Surf Club. And so that surf club is ongoing support. We have weekly surf club sessions that young people can book themselves into. They're also free, and we also provide transport for the young people for those programs to make sure that they have access to them, and they can stay with those programs for as long as they want. There's no kind of age range to stop, and they can just keep coming down to the beach on a weekly basis to continue learning to surf, but they'll also have different mentors there to support them. And so that means that their community is growing bigger of surfers and of people that they can connect with and that they can come to for support if they need it. So when the kids are gone through the 6-week program, they've graduated into surf club and they turn 16, we start talking to them about this idea of becoming a peer mentor. So those that really want to support other young people to learn to surf, choose to do our peer mentoring program. And it's a really, really interesting to watch the young people go through it, because they kind of change that self-identity of wanting or needing the help, and then changing that over to being able to support someone else. And that really, you can see them sort of standing up a bit taller. You can see them really feeling a lot more confident and really happy within themselves when they're able to give that skill to another young person. So they go through our training program and then they start their mentoring journey, which is usually helped along the way. Like we have a mentor that then mentors the peer mentors. And so it's a really slow and gentle and easy introduction to being in that mentor role, and really supportive as well. And so we see that as kind of the evolution of a young person going through the Ocean Mind programs. But then that fourth phase and that fourth area that we see that is really improving and really making some impact in the community is that training of the mentors, and also giving them the chance to practice the skills that they learn in our training sessions and feel really confident and capable to provide mental health support. And that's not just in the program context, but that's in the broader community. So that's their friends and families they'll be able to support as well. We had this young boy who started the programs volunteering when he was 16. He's now 18, but unfortunately in his friendship group, they did have one of their friends suicide last year. But he's come to me and he's been able to get support from Ocean Mind, but he's also said the skills that he's learnt through the program and through training, he's been able to use them to support his friends to get support. And he said, he wouldn't know how to do that if he hadn't been for that support, like that engagement with Ocean Mind. So that's been a really, really great way of being able to support the community in a broader sense than just the ones that are involved with Ocean Mind.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, there's so many, as everyone can hear, there's so many elements to these programs, more than just going out for a surf, as you guys are all aware. And I mean, you guys have all seen firsthand the massive effects that it seems to be having for various populations. And so I guess that's why we were sort of interested in trying to evaluate something that was when we picked it up. I guess the research, what had been published, was sort of only in its infancy at that stage. Joe had put some publications out, and from what Rachel said, had really helped and led the way with Ocean Mind, and Jose at the Wave by Way project, their team had some great research. And so I guess our research team sort of starting point was to look at what was out there and work with Rachael to see how we might be able to contribute to that literature and build on it. And, you know, I guess to give everyone a bit of a background about how that started, it probably a bit naively and a bit overzealous by Rachael and I in our attempt to think how can we contribute here. And obviously the big thing that we saw from the literature that was missing was this, you know, what's termed as the gold standard as the randomized controlled trial. So not just looking at changes within the surf therapy group from the start to the finish, but adding, you know, a control group, which is a group that wouldn't receive the program, to see if the change is different between those who do receive it and those who don't. Anyone who's been involved in research and run a randomized controlled trial would know the enormous amount of work that goes into getting one of these things done, let alone, I guess, the resources required to do it. So probably for the start of the research, it ran a lot on enthusiasm and the time and resources of people who were excited about surf therapy and sort of building on this. And I guess that's where we started. And I think what's probably interesting for everyone is this idea of partnering with the university. So Rachael and I were able to form a formalised partnership between Rachael's not-for-profit organisation and my university, Deakin University. And the beauty of that was meant that Rachael could now access resources from the university. And whilst the research is independent of Ocean Mind, it's I guess something that other surf programs can probably tap into, and probably are starting to look to tap into if they haven't already, around partnering with a local university if research is something that you're interested in getting your programs evaluated, because we know, I guess, from conversations I've had with other groups, that resources and financing and all that is always the challenge. You know, there's so many things that we all want to do, but the resources are finite, and accessing the uni is just one avenue that can potentially, you know, contribute to some of that.
Yeah, definitely. So Lisa, would you be able to sort of give us an idea about what we're actually evaluating in the programs, and what we are looking at in this research that we're doing with Ocean Mind right now?
Yeah, sure. So just based on what Rachael has just described about the program, you know, the first step for us was to, as researchers, get our heads around what the program's actually doing and what they're developing for us to be able to determine what are we going to actually assess, like what's the outcome, what is this program actually trying to achieve, and what are the processes happening within that program that are likely to lead to these outcomes. And so as Rachael talked about, you know, the aim of the Ocean Mind program was to sort of improve these indicators of mental health or among vulnerable populations. And so so we are running, our main study is a randomized controlled trial, which we started in 2019, the beginning of 2019. So it's been going for quite some time now. And we are looking to see how the Ocean Mind program affects a number of indicators of mental health. So we're looking at things like depression and anxiety, self-esteem, sort of internalizing and externalizing symptoms which are related to other mental health issues. So that's our what we would call our primary outcome. And in terms of some of the other external things that we're trying to do, by partnering with the uni, we've been able to access people like Maddie and Cam, who have been a huge part of being able to get the research off the ground. So maybe, Cam, do you want to have a little chat about, you know, the research that you undertook as part of your honours program?
Yeah, thanks for that, Lisa. So yeah, we looked at qualitatively the Ocean Mind program, and we kind of explored through interviews how youth were finding the Ocean Mind program and what they were finding as benefits. And yeah, it kind of came back that having the opportunity to have a sense of a mastery experience in learning to surf in a safe and supportive environment. A few of the other benefits were just the positive emotions and cognitions that come from being around the ocean and that coastal environment, and just the opportunity to be part of a group with that mentor and develop relationships and friendships with mentors and both other peers, and just being able to communicate and interact in a, I suppose, safe and positive group while learning to surf. We also looked at a few of maybe some, I know Rachel's mentioned some of the barriers that they eliminated and stuff when creating the program and developing it. But we also just thought we would investigate from the participants' perspective a few of the barriers that they had kind of come across. And being down in the south of Australia, in Victoria, it gets pretty cold. That was one that a few participants said, it was quite cold a few of the sessions. And then also a few of the others was just a lack of engagement from some youth's family and guardians. Made it a little bit trickier to get to and from programs and be fully engaged. But yeah, just over the last week, that paper was published, so we will send out a link if anyone wants to have a further read and look at some more information around that. But I might hand it over to Maddie.
Yeah, Cam, look, one thing I found really interesting with your paper is you started to have a think about what are the mechanisms going on that within the Ocean Mind program. And I know that there's a couple of other researchers in the surf therapy community starting to think about this. What is it exactly that's going on within these programs that actually provides these benefits? So I would hope that people will have a look at your paper and also get that from your paper. And I suppose the other research areas that we're looking at is in particular the land-based component of the program. So what the kids are taught on the beach and how that might be a beneficial aspect of the program. And then we're also looking in more detail at the mentorship aspect and that relationship between the kids and the mentors and how that might impact what we call secondary outcomes, which is more about the social group and the kids' identity with that group and with the relationship with the mentor, and how that might be a process that is benefiting their participation in the program. So we're looking at different aspects while the randomised control trial is continuing on as well.
Yeah. It's really been a nice sort of flow on from each other where, and I'm sure others who are doing research in this area or in any area have had the same thing where, you start with one point and you discover something and that sort of sends you off to now explore that bit as well as continuing on this part. And then there's these new sort of branches keep growing off and you start to realize how much there is to do in this area and all the different components. And Maddie, I mean, in the paper that was published for us in the Global Journal around the intervention mapping process and how we were able to take the Ocean Mind project and what Joe did with the Wave project, that model, and how we could adapt that to the Australian context. Do you want to touch on that briefly about, I guess the paper's there if people want to look at it in depth, and it can be a bit dry and a bit boring, I think, but do you want to touch on how that was helpful in this process?
Sure, yeah. Look, I think it was a fantastic starting point to think about how or what the method is in developing programs like the Ocean Mind program. And we drew upon an approach called intervention mapping, and it's quite a thorough approach to developing a program. It's used in other areas health. And so we published that paper on intervention mapping, hoping that other surf therapy groups might get some benefit from our approach in thinking about the aspects of the program. So from what that process was drawing upon some of the theory about why this program might be helpful, and drawing upon that past research that's coming out in terms of surf therapy, and drawing on those aspects to start to figure out what were some of the mechanisms of change that might be going on, and how we could actually measure those mechanisms, and then how we could actually evaluate the program itself and evaluate the effectiveness of the program. So it was quite a thorough way of looking at the program, why those 4 components that Rachael went through were important aspects to the program, and then for us as researchers to start thinking about how we could evaluate these components. So yeah, it was a helpful approach to think about the program as a whole, and to start thinking about how we could evaluate elements.
Yeah. Rach, it might be helpful to get your perspective then for others on, how you've found delving into research, and how you've been able to get research up and running as a surf therapy organisation.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic journey. There's been some, I guess, logistical struggles that we've had along the way, where we've, just had to work out how to formulate the control groups without having any young person missing out, and how to explain the research to young people so they understand what's happening when we talk about being in a control group or being in an intervention group. And then, of course, COVID came along and gave us some really good challenges on how we can continue research, or if we could continue research whilst we were doing programs differently online. And then, yeah, it's there's obviously always going to be difficult aspects of research, but I think it's really well worth sort of working through them and putting that extra time and effort in to support sort of the development of research in the field. We are hoping that we'll continue doing research in the future. There's so many different areas that could be researched in just the program design that we have, but also in all the different programs around the world that I know do an amazing job. So although there are those additional time requirements and logistical issues that do pop up around research and getting research done through services, I think it's definitely well worth it, and also really worth putting it in, like any grants and everything that you do get is putting in an element there of sort of research, and really making it an important part of the program as a whole. Yeah, so I guess, it's been such a fantastic opportunity, and we really love working with Deakin University. It's made, like, as much as there's been those logistical things, we've worked through them together, and they've always sort of given us different opportunities. We've always sat down and spoken about any challenges that have come up, and projected them together, which has been really supportive for the program.
Great. Excellent. Sorry, Maddie.
Sorry, no, Lisa, you go.
No, it's all right. I was just going to ask if there was any sort of final comments that you guys wanted to add about that process.
I just wanted to say that I think an extra element to that Rachael can probably talk to a little bit more is that the research component then feeds back into the development of the program. So evaluating how the program's going to then further improve the program. Is that right, Rachael?
Yeah, that's what we try to do at at the end of every season, so our seasons run from September through till the end of May, start of June, and through that winter period is where we do those evaluations, and we do look at, you know, what's worked well and what are we seeing in the data that's really supporting young people. And I think, you know, the more research and the more input that we get from Deakin University about, hey, this is working really well, or here's some areas where we thought were working but actually might not be working, that we need to project and develop the program and develop the model. And I think it's really important to keep developing the model and to keep fine-tuning everything. And it's not even just developing the model to be better. It might be that the cohort of young people are changing and their needs are changing, and so we need to develop the program to change along with what we're seeing in the community and the need that's out there. And without research, we wouldn't be able to tell that.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey from our end, and a really, you know, rewarding and exciting area to be involved in. And I guess, you know, for me, obviously this line of research wouldn't be possible without Ocean Mind, or without the people like Cam and Maddie who contribute their time and efforts and do a great job to keep everything running. So thanks, guys. I think you've done an amazing job and continue to. And, you know, like all of us, there's a lot of unpaid hours in this work, and, you know, the passion for it just sort of drives you. So I really appreciate the work you've done there. But I thought we thought that we might just leave some time in case anyone, no worries, had any questions or you know, wanted to raise anything or any further things that would be helpful for us to talk about. So we thought we'd just open it up to anyone. And I know this is always a bit hit and miss on Zoom, but we'll see how we go.
I guess I have a question. First off, I mean, your work is incredible, and thank you for taking the time to really, you know, put it out there and to kind of show your model and the evaluation process. I know, especially working with youth, when we're labeling it with like therapy or traditional forms of therapy, it's not really, or not as effective. And that's why I think surf therapy, you know, kids do really well and they gravitate towards it and they do well in it. I'm curious how you are evaluating the levels of depression, anxiety, and or self-esteem. You know, is that with questionnaires? Is that with the qualitative work? Is that through, you know, how are you doing that? And also at what point are you doing that?
Yeah, so we're evaluating it via questionnaires. So most of our outcome measures are via questionnaires, and we're delivering that pre-intervention. So when Rachel goes out to do the interview, like the meet and greet with the family, we'll now have a researcher who also goes out with the Ocean Mind staff member, and we conduct the assessment there prior to them coming into the program. Then, because ours is a randomized controlled trial, the child then either gets allocated to receive the intervention straight away or to go into the control group, and they will receive the intervention after they've left the research. Then we repeat the same assessment. So we repeat the same assessment at 6 weeks. So it's a 6-week program, and the same questionnaires are delivered again at 6 weeks. And then we also have a 6-week follow-up period. So that's 6 weeks after they've left the program. We'll do a third assessment of the questionnaires to see whether any changes that may have happened during the program are then sustained 6 weeks after. And, you know, there's been challenges with the in terms of the population we're working with, in terms of how long that follow-up period could be. So ideally in these kind of trials, that follow-up period would be longer, you know, to see whether these changes, if there are any positive changes, that they're actually sustained over a longer period of time. But I guess it was weighing up the ethical situation of having a child who may benefit from this program and not allowing them to have access to that program for a longer period. We didn't feel that was ethical, so we went with the 6 week. Thanks. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Maddie, did you want to talk about the types of measures? I don't know if that's helpful, that specific information is helpful or not.
Yeah, I can, if that's helpful. So our primary outcome measures, as Lisa mentioned, is looking at the depression and anxiety symptoms. We're doing that with the RCADS, so that stands for...
That's the revised children's anxiety
revised,
and depression.
children's anxiety and depression scale. And then we've also administered the strengths and difficulties questionnaire. So that's looking at some internalizing and externalizing behaviours. So these are very well validated measures that are used with children in lots of different settings. Self-esteem, we're using the self-description questionnaire to measure their self-esteem globally and within their physical abilities as well. And then we've also got a measure called the school climate and school identification measure. And we've adapted that measure to this context. And that measure looks at the social connectedness of the kids to the group and how much they identify with the group as well. And then there's some other measures that we've used, like a connectedness to nature and the ocean measure that we've adapted. And that connectedness is that feeling of belonging, that emotional kind of connection and affinity that a lot of surfers comment on that they have when they're surfing with the ocean and nature. So we also wanted to check if that's an element for the kids and how that relates to their mental health outcomes. We've also been using qualitative, so groups after the program, focus groups and interviews to get some more in-depth data from the kids about the benefits and the barriers to the program, as well for the mentors as well. We've also done interviews with the mentors to see if there's any aspects of the program that have kind of facilitated any change.
Yeah. And so that sort of intervention mapping process that Maddie was talking about at the start sort of really helped us to identify what might be useful to measure. So, you know, a lot of randomized control trials, I guess, get criticized because they talk about, you know, they get this outcome and whether there has been change, but then they can't speak to why that change may have come about. So we've tried to not only assess if there's any positive change that might occur, but also to assess things that might be able to give us hints towards what were the mechanisms in this specific program that may have led to that change. And, you know, like Maddie said, we base those choices on what we already know from evidence, both in surf therapy and in the wider literature, looking at adventure therapy and, you know, physical activity literature and outdoor education and all those sort of similar areas, but also looking at theory, so being informed by what theory says should happen. Thanks, Maddie. Any other burning questions out there? Or
I have a question. What types of activities do you implement on land before and after the actual getting into the water part of the session to be able to promote, you know, the relief of depression and anxiety and social bonding and trustworthiness and things like that? Is there anything specific, or do you just kind of like do some processing throughout the group?
We what we do is we have sort of activities that we've created or that we've chosen to support the development of the relationship to begin with, and then as a mentor and a young person. So we concentrate on developing that relationship and helping to build that relationship by doing activities where we strengthen, where we kind of give those opportunities for those relationships to strengthen. And we do We then sort of build up after the first 2 weeks of doing those relationship building, we build into more of that relationship building with the group. And so we do activities where the whole group's involved and giving opportunities to interact with the whole group, and learning those skills with the whole group. And then that feeds on to sort of building trust and doing activities that are kind of testing those trusts. So, they're all outdoor ed style activities where we've got, like blindfold games that we use. We do some activities where it's challenging the communication between the volunteer and the young person. They're all a bit of fun activities, fun, engaging activities, but we all do a debrief at the end of each of them. So that's to kind of draw in what are we learning in these spaces, not just doing an activity, but we're kind of trying to draw out, well, what is it that we're trying to get them to think about and to understand. And then we have at the end of our sessions on session 1, 3, and 6 is a whole group debrief of sort of how the sessions went for the day. So really getting them to think about and talk about their experiences for the day. And also kind of talking about how they're feeling at the start of the session to the end of the session, and whether there's any shifts, and giving them sort of that language around emotion and really talking about how things are going for themselves.
Yep. And if we put preface is that the 3 researchers here are from a clinical psychology background. If we put that sort of into our clinical speak, it's really a cognitive behavioural based intervention, in that there is these conversations are sort of linking the ideas between thoughts and feelings and what kids do and how those behaviours are affecting, the way they're thinking and things like that. And also, I guess, there's also sort of, we've drawn out from what Rachel's explained and what we've assessed is there's this sort of behavioural activation aspect as well, particularly amongst those kids who sort of have been identified as having sort of mood issues or depressive presentations. Hopefully that helps.
I have another kind of practical question. Thanks for the talk, guys. It was really informative. What is the duration of that actual on the sand component? Like, how long does it go for? And what would you say the breakdown is between actually talking with participants versus doing activities and engaging activity?
It changes each week. So like on week 1, we usually have about an hour and a quarter on the sand, working on really cementing those relationships and really building those relationships with the mentor, and then building the trust before we ask them to go in the water, and trust their mentor in the water, on like supporting them with their board and all that kind of thing. So at the very beginning, it starts off with about 45 minutes actually in the water doing a surfing activity, and the rest of the time it's on land. A mixture between sort of one-to-one talking with their mentor and group activity to build that sense of relationship there and trust. And then as we progress over those 6 weeks, we have sort of more ocean time, less sand time, and the activities kind of get so the activities sort of move down to about a half-hour block out of the water, and then we go down to the beach, do a bit of a recap of the skills to learn to surf, and sort of the beach safety, and learning about tides and water conditions and the environment and the ocean to make sure safety is there as well, and then being out in the water and doing that one-to-one. So in the water, they're all one-to-one with their mentor and are talking and creating that relationship there too.
Awesome. And how big are the groups, Rachel?
10. So, at the moment they're 10. When COVID restrictions come in, we get them smaller, but we try and we don't do more than 10. Yeah.
Awesome. I do have one more question, hopefully not hogging the space here. With the intervention mapping, was there anything specifically that you guys found that was really correlated to like positive outcomes with young people, whether it be like they really enjoyed the activities or the connection or being in the water? Like, was there anything that stood out?
I wouldn't say anything stood out, and so I guess where the intervention mapping process was more about identifying an array of things, and then it was also influenced by our choice about what we ended up wanting to study. what was actually feasible within the setting that we had. So when I say what was feasible, I mean, what could we actually change? What were the things that we could target that could actually be changed? Maddie, did you want to add anything about whether there were specific things that came up? I mean, I think we had an array of things that we then purposefully narrowed down based on resources, the context of the, surf coast setting in Victoria and the challenges around the weather and the water. Did you want to add anything there, Maddie?
Oh, look, I think a lot of what we found in the literature is reinforced with a lot of other surf programs around the world and in the surf therapy literature, is that elements of the actual surfing activity are therapeutic. The group environment is really important, and that natural ocean setting. And I think the mentorship may differ between different surf therapy organisations, but from the literature we found that the mentorship between the child and the volunteer has potential benefits as well associated with those positive mental health outcomes in terms of the youth wellbeing and their self-esteem and connectedness. So that's generally what we've found when reviewing the literature, which did coincide with a lot of the elements that Rachael had put together in the program. Yeah.
And Mark, you might find useful in the paper that got published in the special issue. There's actually some matrices in there. So I think there's some of the tables which sort of link the theories to what Ocean Mind does to address that theory, and what aspect of the child's outcome that is targeting to change. So it really sort of gets down into the nitty gritty. That paper is a bit of a dense paper, I think. It's quite theoretical and a bit academic. So I have to apologise about that. So it can be a bit of a dry read, but there's some really valuable and interesting, I think anyway, in those tables that much be useful to have a look at, and we'll probably answer that question much more.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa. I'll check that out.
Yeah, no worries.
Hi.
Great. Well, I think, yep, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think we have one more
Dave.
question from
Can you
Dave.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Hey, Dave.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Obviously, the whole research is a big undertaking that you said. I'm wondering, it's probably not sustainable to do that for every program. Is there like a skeleton type evaluation, Rachael, maybe that you do, and what does that look like for each program, and what kind of things are you measuring or trying to measure, and how do you do that?
That's separate from the research group.
Yes. Yeah.
So we do, the WAVE project actually gave us their pre and post evaluation method. And so we used their method, which was developed by the Stirling University in the UK. And so we use their pre and post evaluations, which is just looking at wellness, connectedness, and connectedness with the community, feelings of health and well-being, and connectedness with Ocean Mind and the ocean. So we do that pre and post the 6-week program, and then the data that we collect is sort of the attendance rates, who's mentored who, and we also look at, we ask the parents. We have a evaluation or feedback from the parents. We ask them how they have rated the young people and what they're seeing from their child's perspective. And we also have one that goes out to the referrers. Have to say, the one that goes out to the referrers doesn't come back very often, so we don't get much detail from that one. But yeah, having that parental feedback as well is quite valuable for us.
Dave, I think ISTO's doing a fair bit of work in terms of, with Jamie Marshall and some others, and Chris probably, developing some evaluations that are doable for organisations. And I think one of the ideas, and Chris, if I've got getting this wrong, please correct me. One of the ideas was to sort of have some consistency between the groups, which is obviously difficult because not every program is attempting to address the same thing, but there are some similarities. And I guess the benefit of that sort of consistent approach in terms of building the research and building published research is then, you know, we'll have a whole pile of outcomes that are measured the same thing, and then we can sort of pull them all together, which, you know, gives us even stronger evidence in these individual studies to be able to go to governments and you know, rally for policy change to get surf therapy as something that, you know, doctors are prescribing, or an evidence-based therapy sort of thing.
Yeah. Are those pre and post surveys available somewhere?
I can probably answer. Hi. Oh my gosh. I feel like I stopped counting, but I was so like engrossed in how many times you use the word community, because it is so important that your programs are utilizing, you know, the local community and the local businesses, the individuals they want to help, let them help. And I love Cameron, Madeleine, Lisa, Rachel, you said community so often. I was like, oh, my new favorite reminder word about what we're doing. But Dave, to answer your question, ISTO, actually, we are launching the first ever pilot study to capture impact on a larger scale across populations. So if you want to get involved in that, we're going to analyze all the data for you. And to Lisa's point, this is not a randomized controlled trial because we are not capable. We do not have the capacity yet to do so. It's not just capacity, resources, money, all of those things. So much goes into an RCT, but it is to begin to show, you know, the impact across populations, and also ideally to show proof of concept that we can potentially bring all of these organizations together and do this pilot study. We do have 12 organizations that have said yes, they want to be involved in the pilot study. And I would say the benefits to you is if you're just getting started in research and it's sort of out of your realm. For most of us surfers, it is, unless you attach yourself to a university such as Rachel did with Ocean Mind and have the Lisas and the Madeleines and Camerons of the world. But since we are going to analyze all your data, it's really just to get you in the habit of collecting. So for any program working or serving youth, we're using the Children's Hope Scale to measure hope for the future. And for adults, we're using PANIS, which is the positive and negative effects scale. And we are doing pre-post. We'll be asking the organizations to do pre-post. But if you want to get involved in that, please let me know, because we are just getting ready to launch it. And but you have all year to participate in it. So there's no time frame, and there's no like you gotta do it this month or kind of any of that. So yeah, I mean, I think also Ocean Mind, gosh, what's so great about your methodology is it really highlights the ancillary beneficiaries, right? Like it's not just your participants. We know they're benefiting, but you've got your mentors who are benefiting. You've got friends of participants, friends and family members of mentors. I really love that. And I fingers crossed, what I hope to do one day is be able to do a pilot study where all of the organizations, ISTO is working with almost 70 now, is to do a pilot study to measure the benefits from the volunteers. Because we know our participants, or I always refer to them as athletes. We know the athletes are benefiting greatly, and that is important for your programming. But our volunteers, I remember when I ran programs, they would tell me this was my therapy, right? Mm-hmm. And you continue to hear that, you know, consistently. And so, gosh, if they're experiencing benefits, we should be measuring that, and that's definitely missing in research for sure. But thank you so much for everybody on here and for Ocean Mind, all of you for the work that you're doing. This has been recorded. It will be on our YouTube channel. We will include all the links to everything that is Ocean Mind, to the research that they just got published. Actually, I think you did. Did you already do that, Rachel? Well, we'll put on the YouTube channel as well. And then last question, what is the timeline for the RCT to wrap up? And then what do you, I would just say guesstimate how long it would be after that we would see that report.
Yeah, so we were hoping to be finished by the end of this year, but COVID threw a bit of a spanner in the works with our recruitment rates last year. So we've done a calculation to find out how many people we need to be able to have the strength to see effects. So we're just waiting to hit that magic number until we stop. So we're probably 3/4 of the way so far. So we've just got a little bit to go. But as Rach said, you know, we're recruiting 10 kids at a time per session, 10 kids per session. So we're having to repeat that quite a number of times to get enough participants. So short answer, we're probably a ways away, you know, probably 6 months more to get the actual research finished, and then a few months after that, I guess, to write it up.
Okay, well, thank you for that. For everybody on this call, I got a little quick discussion with Ocean Mind prior to, and had mentioned that Kristen Walter's randomized control trial, once again, COVID kind of messed that up, but they were able to decide based on the numbers that they had, they would be able to finish it, but they're probably at the end of the year, maybe it'll be written up. So it's great because, you know, we need more rigor in our research. We need more randomized control trials. If all of us were just pharmaceutical companies with billions of dollars, we could do randomized control trials like, you know, eating M&Ms.
Exactly.
We need those resources. We need all of that to happen. So please continue to do what you're doing. If anybody has any questions on our pilot study, please reach out. The working groups are going to be starting. If you're interested in having more of these discussions with your peers and your colleagues and your practitioners that are working with the same populations, that will get started this month. And yeah, we're really excited to move forward with a whole bunch of things that we have to now do over Zoom, but that's okay. Well, you know, we adapt. Thanks again so much, Ocean Mind Inc. And if anybody had any other questions, please reach out and I'll make sure that they get back and are able to answer those questions. And yeah, happy 2021, everyone. Let's hope we can continue to deliver surf therapy all around the world. Southern California, we are still completely locked down. We can't get permits for that at all. So even though you guys only have 10 sounds like a miracle. I see Maria in Argentina. I know they're not getting 10. So 10 is like, it sounds like gold, sounds like a million. You know, so many people had to postpone in 2020, and we won't get into how the US handled COVID, but the US has been unable to conduct almost all surf therapy. So Australia, keep doing what you're doing, and the rest of the world who have handled a world pandemic well enough to be able to deliver surf therapy, thank you for doing that. Keep doing what you're doing. And yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thanks, Rachel, Lisa, Maddie, Cam. Well done.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Great job, Rachel.
Thanks, guys.
Great job.